Let me encourage everyone to please send in questions to the chat or raise questions, because I have a couple more questions for you guys, and then we can open it up to any other questions. What was the impact of this investigation when it was all, done? I mean, I think there are, I think probably the most immediate impact was on the families, but also how did it change how this is investigated? Has there been further investigation into this and other cases? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Well, I think let's say the immediate impact was that we saw, for example, the ICRC that initially had said it wouldn't be able to help some families with the DNA test, then go back and say, okay, we can help you actually, and go back and take more samples and send more samples to Tobago. And that was very good. The other impact, I think, was just really bring this issue of the Atlantic migration route and all the deaths and disappearances and all these boats that were washing ashore on the other side of the Atlantic to the international stage. I think a bit more, give more attention to this route, because we talk about the Mediterranean a lot, but the Atlantic is so deadly and there's so little information about it. And then I think this year, for example, we saw again another case happen in Brazil, a boat from Mauritania that drifted across the Atlantic and was found in Brazil. And authorities had seen our investigation, had seen our story, and used a lot of the lessons learned or the techniques we used and are now investigating this case in Brazil and have this as a reference. So that is, I think, really beneficial, just to have more information about, the fact that these boats are washing ashore on the other side of the Atlantic, and people know about it, and families know about it, and authorities know about it.
We definitely noticed that every time after we published, as Renata said, it was not the first time that happened, but it was really, there was not a single investigation like this before. So after that, every boat that appeared across the Atlantic, we would see a spike in our.
I think.
Like people were reaching out to us again and asking more.
I think we proved that it's cases like this can be investigated and people can be found. And victims can't be identified, because a lot of times we see cases like this and they lead to nothing. There's no conclusion. No one gets identified. Families are never informed. We kind of proved it can be done if people put in the resources and the time to do it.
Which brings up the question of, why do you think this was so ignored? Why did nobody pay attention to this? We hear about, boats in the Mediterranean, certainly, but nobody had written about this. Why?
I mean, to be fair, there had been some stories on the Atlantic route. I'm not saying no one had written about it, but I think few had investigated this thoroughly and found the families and showed the link and also showed the scope of the problem. We identified just into 2021, I don't remember now if it's 6 or 7 boats that drifted from West Africa to the Caribbean that were trying to get to Spain. So it really is a big issue. And this is not counting all the other boats that disappear.
Which are
I think
the majority.
I think that, I mean, the lack of interest in solving cases of dead migrants or missing migrants and finding their families and identifying them is a problem across the world. But I think in this route that's so disconnected, first of all, I think that the fact that these are usually Black people we're talking about from Africa, from West Africa, Black men. If they were white, I think the reaction and the interest in finding out what had happened would have been much
very different.
Yes, I think the reaction would have been different. But I think also, to be fair, people in the Caribbean and in Latin America didn't have this context of the migration. They didn't know the migration that was happening from West Africa to Spain. And so I think we're connecting the dots and kind of giving that context, giving that background and information.
And we saw that very clearly a few months ago when this boat was found in Brazil. And, you know, we're both Brazilians, so we were following the local news in Brazil. And the first kind of news when it came out, assumptions were absolutely wrong. And we, of course,
people were saying, "Oh, these are Haitians."
These are Haitians,
And
because
like,
you knew that was not.
because they thought it would be from somewhere nearby, not across the Atlantic. When we saw the boat, we immediately knew that was a Mauritanian boat. But, you know, people that are covering
that was not the
news
first.
and local authorities, they would not think that this. And then that's where we also saw the actually our story was used as evidence that, oh, this could be a Mauritanian boat. And then, you know, of course, we know that's the case, but
Turned out to be.
it would not be known if and like in other cases as well. Yeah.
So I'm guessing at the start of this investigation, you had no idea how hard it would be and no idea that it would take 2 years. Is that right? And were there points when you just wanted to give up altogether?
For sure. I mean, I think I've said this already. In the beginning, I thought I was just going to report on what police found out. I was just waiting for authorities to, you know, figure out what had happened, and I would report on whatever conclusion they reached. And then we realized that they weren't moving forward, that the investigation had stalled, that, you know, it was just going to end there. And we decided, and other organizations that could have helped or might have done more weren't also doing anything or not enough. So we decided to take it on ourselves. And we didn't realize we would get as far as we did. There were also things that happened throughout our reporting, both related and unrelated to the story. For example, there was the war in Ukraine, that we had to, you know, pause and report on that as well. And so it took much longer than we had anticipated, but I think in the end, the time also helped us get to the bottom of it.
A lot of the steps, like the DNA test that we spoke earlier, those are steps that were very important, but they took months and many months that we had to wait for something that we couldn't do much in between. So it was very difficult to,
And there are moments where you progress very rapidly in the investigation, and moments where it stalls again and you think you're never going to get the story, or that, you know, your sources disappear or go quiet, and then you kind of want to give up, and then they come back, and then there's more information, and all of a sudden it speeds up again, and you pick up the pace and more information. But it's really a roller coaster of reporting, of emotions, of findings, of, you know, everything.